The word strategic Bitcoin reserve to the casual observer sound like a stockpile of an asset. To a closer observer, it sounds like a stockpile of the most valuable asset the human race has ever invented. But I'm here today to show you how the strategic Bitcoin reserve represents a strategy for United States digital supremacy in the 21st century.
마이클 세일러는 미국의 기업 가이자 투자자로 소프트웨어 회사 마이크로스트래티지의 공동 창립자이자 회장입니다. 특히 비트코인 강력한 옹호자로 유명하며 2020년부터 마이크로스트래티지를 통해 대규모 비트코인 투자를 주도했습니다. 이런 그가 최근 미국 정부에서 주도하고 있는 비트코인 전략적 준비금에 대해서 설명했는데요.
The president with his vision has established a strategic Bitcoin reserve as of last week and has declared that America will be the Bitcoin superpower. I would hazard to guess that the great majority of the people that saw that post don't even know what Bitcoin superpower means, and they haven't really considered it. I was inspired by the words, and that caused me to put together this presentation today. Why is Bitcoin critical to the prosperity of the United States in the 21st century? That is the question we all should be asking. There are many metaphors for thinking about a strategic reserve of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is digital capital. If we thought of it as Bitcoin as digital capital, is this a stockpile of cheese? Is this a stockpile of oil, natural gas, or even uranium, all of which would be interesting? Well, at its worst case, in its narrowest form, you could think about the strategic Bitcoin reserve as a stockpile of the apex asset of the human race. And so what's it worth? Well, over the next 20 years, I think it's worth anywhere from $3 trillion to $106 trillion to the United States. U.S. corporations, like my corporation, are actually recapitalizing on Bitcoin. We've gone from having $250 million of assets 48 months ago to having nearly $45 billion of assets in 48 months. If you look out over the next 20 years, corporations that are accumulating Bitcoin on their reserve, like MSTR, like Mara, like Riot, they're going to have $20 to $40 trillion. So it's hard to rent out or finance or develop your cheese or your gold or your natural gas buried in a vault. So a more powerful metaphor is Bitcoin as digital property. If you own 5% of Manhattan and your family had owned it for 100 years and someone said, how are you going to pay your bills? You wouldn't say, we're just going to sell it. You would say, we're going to rent it. We're going to develop it. We're going to put a building on top of it, a business on top of it, or we're going to finance it. We're going to borrow against it. The same is true with Bitcoin. In 20 years, the United States could be generating $10 trillion per year by renting, developing, or financing the assets in that strategic Bitcoin reserve. The AIs are coming. The AIs don't get bank accounts. They don't get credit cards. The AIs, the artificial intelligence economy, will be built on digital capital, digital property. It'll be a $100 trillion economy. It'll be built on Bitcoin. A lot of people, they think of it as an asset, you think of it as a property, but what we know to be true is that Bitcoin is actually a network. It's not just any network. It's not an information network. It's an energy network. It's a conservative network. I can send $1 billion from me to you. I lose it. You have it. That is the conservation of energy in cyberspace. Bitcoin's a digital defense system. Bitcoin messages, data authentications, transactions, they're unstoppable, uncorruptible, immutable, immune to tampering by any known cyber threat. You can protect the United States commercial and military and financial systems behind a wall of digital energy. And that's exactly how we will do it. Even Elon Musk pointed out, the AIs don't know how to hack Bitcoin. They can spoof you out of your money. They can convince you that there's someone they're not. There's no way to trick an 800 exahash digital wall that's based on modern encryption. The AIs won't get through that. What's driving the growth of Bitcoin? It is the most powerful force in the world right now. It's growing nearly 60%. It's become the eighth largest asset in the world. It's about to become the largest asset in the world in the next 48 months. What is it? It's all of the smart money in the world running from risk, running from the past toward the future, from something less secure to something more secure. And they're doing it in the most visible way with their capital. This is a map of the wealth distribution in the world, about $900 trillion. If you break it into uses, half of it is just a store of value. We're long-term, we're preserving our capital for the long term. We just want to keep our money. The other half are assets held for utility. I want to do something with the asset. People go, well, what is Bitcoin's use case? The use case is to not suffer $10 trillion a year of damage from entropy, from inflation, from chaos, from the future. Bitcoin's an asset without the financial risk of a currency, a bond, a stock, and it doesn't have the physical risk of real estate and property. And we're stripping away the counterparty risk to everything. And so we're moving away from risk, and what that means is that as the word spreads that there's an opportunity to keep your money without taking risk, long-term capital is being merged into the Bitcoin network. The greatest digital transformation of the 21st century, it isn't the transformation of music, it isn't the transformation of your photos, your communications, your Facebook friends, or educational videos, although each of those things made $1 trillion company. The greatest digital transformation is the transformation of capital. So it's the transformation of 450 trillion. What's it worth? It's half of everything. That's the transformation. Digital capital is stronger, faster, and smarter capital. It's global capital. Bitcoin is immortal capital, right? You can keep your money for 1,000 years. A 10 basis point fee works out to a useful lifetime of 1,000 years. All the other long-term capital assets have a life of 10 to 100 years. Find a business you want to invest in that'll be around for 500 years. Find a building that will last for 500 years. Find a bond that will pay off in 500 years. Find a piece of art that'll still be legible in 500 years. And finally, what we all know in this room is that Bitcoin and digital capital is ethical capital. It's the only thing in this world you can truly own. If you have possession of the keys, if you have possession of the knowledge of where the keys might be, you own the thing. No one can take the thing away from you. Everything else you have in this world, you own at the pleasure of someone more powerful than you until they decide to take it away from you. Satoshi gave us property rights, sound money, sovereign money. It's the most interesting, it's growing stronger, it's growing hotter, it's growing denser. As it draws the capital of the world into its orbit, it's drawing antiquated capital, the capital of the 20th century. It's drawing smart capital. Anybody that thought about it, thought, do I want to be invested in something that's going to decay or be destroyed over time by 100 uncertain risks, or do I want to just keep my money in cyberspace? Right now it's been growing about 60% a year. If it decelerates from 60% a year to 20% a year, the average return is going to be 29% a year over the 20 years. That is the base case. That arrives at a price of $13 million of Bitcoin in USD terms, or $280 trillion in the network. Does the world turn upside down? No. What happens? Well, everything pretty much stays the same, except for those that embrace Bitcoin get rich and powerful. Those that don't embrace Bitcoin get weaker and poorer. Otherwise, everything that you see in the world today will still be there in the world in 20 years. And you're smart, you're using the Bitcoin. And so the dollar is competing, but is competing against the M2 money supply of the CNY, Chinese currency, European currency, Japanese currency. We have two strategies. expand our currency to dominate the world with the digital currency of choice, expand our capital to dominate the world with the digital capital of choice.
마이클 세일러는 미국이 비트코인 전략적 비축 준비금을 통해 세계 경제를 지배하려 한다고 얘기한 건데요. 비트코인이 미래 경제의 패권을 잡기 위해선 꼭 필요한 자산 가치이며 20년 내에 280조 달러 규모까지 성장할 가능성이 있다고 말합니다. 그리고 현재 AI의 시대가 오고 있고 디지털 자본이 곧 핵심이 되며 비트코인이 이를 지탱할 핵심이라는 거죠. 심지어 비트코인을 축적하는 국가가 강해지고 외면하는 국가는 약해질 것이라는 전망까지 내다보고 있는데요. 여러분들은 어떻게 생각하시나요? 우리는 객관적인 시각으로 투자를 해야 하고 지금 당장만 보고 투자할 게 아니라 미래를 보고 투자를 해야겠죠. 010-2472-0429 전화번호로 탈겜이 적어서 문자 보내주시면 2025년 비트코인과 코인 시장에 대한 분석, 정보들 공유해드리겠습니다. 현재 우리에게 중요한 것은 이러한 정보를 어떻게 활용할 것인가입니다. 지금까지 영상 시청해주셔서 감사하고요. 다음에 더 좋은 영상으로 찾아뵙겠습니다. 감사합니다.